Okay, so just to summarize very quickly what we've been studying thus far in this chapter called Mitzvot in the 13 Petalled Rose, we're thinking about how mitzvot, the word that is usually translated into good deeds, really means connection, partnership. And that's because each time we do a mitzvah, we're connecting with the very desire of God, God who desired us to perform these commandments. And therefore, we're connecting to the essence of God with each and every mitzvah. Every mitzvah is a different type of connection. And that's why, in a way, you know, the Mishnah said, and we spoke about this, that God brought great merit upon the Jewish nation. And therefore, and that great merit was by giving them many, many mitzvot. Now, one may say, 1 second, these are not merits, these are more responsibilities. It's more burdens to have, it's much more of a burden to have many mitzvot to fulfill. If God had given us just one mitzvah, one burden, we could do that. Many mitzvot adds more burden. So there's no merit here. And the answer is that if you can't fulfill one mitzvah, then at least fulfill another mitzvah. God is giving you many opportunities with which to connect with him. So if you can't connect with him with one mitzvah, then pick another mitzvah to connect with him. The more, of course, the better. But these are many bridges to God. And that's really what mitzvahs are, bridges, points of connection, or as again, an opportunity to partner with God, to truly partner with God in making this world a better place. That's really the big idea that has been shared here regarding mitzvot. We also spoke about the different types and categories of mitzvot. Some mitzvot are related to the Jewish calendar, are time related, like Shabbat or like holidays. Some mitzvot are more action related, like tzedakah. Then we spoke about mitzvot that enter certain categories, like we spoke about intimacy, the laws of intimacy as it relates to husband and wife, and the structure built by God himself to ensure that we fulfill that connection with him, even within those structures. So there were many different categories that were offered, but again, the common denominator is that each and every category really is a bridge to God. And we have, thankfully, an opportunity to be bridged and connected with God at every opportunity of the day and night. As soon as we wake up in the morning until we go to sleep at night, and including during nighttime itself, we also have an opportunity to be connected with God through these mitzvot. That was really the main idea. And then we spoke about maybe the most latest topic was how we have also interrelationship mitzvot. We spoke about this concept that if we had to take all of the 613 commandments that we find in the Torah and divide them into two categories, there are many subcategories, but two very general categories will be the category of Bein Adam LaMakom and Bein Adam LaChavero. One versus God, there's obligations that I have personally towards God that have nothing to do with society. For example, the obligation of, I would say, praying or studying Torah. These are mitzvot, but it's me versus God. And then you have the mitzvot of Ben Adam L'Chavero, which I would say most of the mitzvot fall into that category, and that is me towards others. So tzedakah is one classical example, but so many others too. That was the general idea that we spoke about last time. But let's continue here. As you mentioned, Gila, the middle of page 127, we're nearing the end of the chapter. Maybe we'll end it today. Maybe we'll have the privilege of it today. Depends on how this goes. But let's go. Thus in all walks of social existence. Does anyone want to read? Middle of page 127.
Okay, Rabbi.
Okay. Please, Gila, thank you.
Thus, in all walks of social existence, the obligation is not only to refrain from things that may be injurious to others, but to act deliberately and wholeheartedly to improve and raise the order of life. There is, for instance, the ancient custom of giving a tenth of one's wealth to charity to help others in any way that seems appropriate. Although the general aim of the ethic is to perfect the society, every individual is related to in supreme earnestness. A single person is reckoned as though he were a world, a totality unto itself. and the concern for him has to be the same mixture of love and respect that one renders to a divine manifestation.
Right. So in a way, maybe this also explains why the word for charity in Hebrew is tzedakah, which really does not mean charity, it means justice, comes from the word tzedek. And that is because when we're giving tzedakah, we're not doing that which we can do or even is nice to do or charitable to do, as charity would connote, but we're doing that which we have to do. Not only even should do, but have to do. It's part of the just things that we ought to do in this world. Why? Because part of existing is giving. I think that's what the difference between existence and life. Existence is taking. Life is when we start to give. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, who would very often say that you make a living by what you get, yet you make a life by what you give. A life entails giving. And therefore, it is only just to give tzedakah. It's not kind, charitable, it's just. Rabbi Steinsaltz would often say that people who only take bodily wise can cause for themselves all sorts of diseases. The most maybe minor of them all is constipation. And he would say that if you don't give tzedakah, then you're suffering from spiritual constipation. To live a healthy life, again, life, not just a healthy existence, but a healthy life, you need to be able to take, but you also need to be able to give. Otherwise, you're suffering from spiritual constipation. Really, I've heard Rabbi Steinsaltz say this quite a few times. But it's true. That's the way God wired us, as not just taking beings, but as giving beings. And I would say that, very often there's many philosophical, intellectual discussions of what Judaism's ultimate social model is. Is it communism? Is it socialism? Is it capitalism? I would argue that Judaism's ultimate model is capitalism with conscience. And what I mean by that is that, yes, we believe in capitalism, but also the Torah has given us a structure in which capitalism does not turn into something very selfish, very self-centered, as it can become, as we've seen it become, maybe here even in America, but it becomes, in a way, a source of wealth that then benefits society. So that's why, for example, we have the laws of Shemitah. We spoke about this in our last class, but this year in Israel is the year of Shemitah, which means that the entire land of Israel does not belong to anyone. Yes, farmers may say, oh, this is my land. My parents can say, well, we own a backyard. Those fruits are ours. No, sorry. Once every 7 years, those belong to everybody. In other words, once every 7 years, you have to turn outwards and give towards the people on the outside. We also have the laws of 10%, like the Rabbi Steinsaltz is mentioning here, giving 10% of all of your profits to make sure, again, that capitalism doesn't become selfish. We have the laws of many, many laws. Just another law that comes to mind is that farmers, when they would collect their fruits and bring those fruits or vegetables home, any fruit and vegetable that was left behind had to be left for the poor. So we see that giving in Judaism is very much part of one's life. Without giving, you're suffering at least from spiritual constipation, if not from more things. And in a way, I would add one more layer to this idea that we have to be, cognizant of our surroundings and in a way benefit our surroundings. I would add the spiritual aspect, and that is that every encounter that we have in life, and we spoke a little bit about this in our previous class too, and every place that we find ourselves in life is not random. It's there for a reason. God made us encounter this person in order for us maybe to shine our light, shine our blessings on that person. God put us in that place in order for us to make a difference, an impact, a positive impact in that place. Otherwise, God would have put someone else in that place. God would have made us encounter someone else or made that person encounter someone else. So the fact that we are in this place today, encountering that person today, is for us, again, to give. That's the whole reason for creation. And by playing our note in that symphony, so to speak, right, we're ensuring that the giving happens. Otherwise, it's like a symphony missing a note. And that's a travesty, not just to us, but to the entire world, to the symphony altogether. That's the big idea here in Rabbi Steinsaltz's words. And I just want to add one more thing. Again, I don't want to be just monologuing, and I'd love to hear your take too. But I think that, it just astonishes me that at the end of the day, and I've participated, unfortunately, many funerals as a rabbi, at the end of the day, all eulogies speak about how much the deceased gave, not how much they took, not what Ferrari they had in their garage and how big their mansion was. No, they speak about how much they gave, their kindness, their goodness, their impact that they had, whether emotional impact, financial impact, or intellectual impact, what they left behind. And I'm reminded of Alfred Nobel. The Nobel Prize is named after Alfred Nobel. Alfred Nobel was actually the inventor of the dynamite. And one day he was sitting in his porch and he was reading his obituary. By mistake, the newspaper thought that Alfred Nobel had died. So they published his obituary. And there he is, sitting on his porch, reading his own obituary. And in his own obituary, he was reading that he was remembered as the inventor of the dynamite that's responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths, right? Dynamite produced the bomb. And he said to himself, gosh, is that the way I really want to be remembered? And he reached a conclusion with a resounding no. So from that day on, he decided to contribute to the world. He said, how can I be remembered in a benevolent way? And he created a Nobel Prize that recognizes the impact that people have on this world for the betterment of this world. Today, people remember our friend Nobel they connect his name with the Nobel Prize because he had that epiphany reading his obituary one day. And I think that it wouldn't hurt for us to ponder from time to time, and I don't mean to be negative, God forbid, but I think it helps to ponder from time to time. If an obituary was written for me today, what would it say? And if it doesn't have the element of giving, then it's not a life worth living. And this is what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here in this paragraph. But yes, please, Diana.
Rabbi, you know that a few months ago, my son-in-law had a stroke and I quickly sold my house, gave everything. I started out thinking I was going to sell something. In fact, I met Joyce in the store. Joyce, do you remember? I was giving some books to get a little money back. And they didn't give you any money. I went and had lunch on it, and I never gave away another thing. I just gave to people, and everybody came, everybody took. There is so much love in giving that you benefit from it more than anybody else. And I don't miss a thing. I'm happy where I am.
No, that's so beautiful.
It was a very, in a very short period of time, a very big discovery.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful. When one of the instances in which God asks the Jewish people to give, he asked them to give towards the construction of a tabernacle in the desert, right? It's in the portion of Kitisa, the book of Exodus, Shemot. And there God says, V'natnu ish kofer nafsho, that everyone has to give an atonement for himself by giving tzedakah. Now, the word V'natnu, which is really the commandment of, and they shall give, is an interesting word in Hebrew, because as the commentaries point out, it's a word that can be read either from right to left, as the Hebrew language is usually read, or from left to right. Venatnu can be read both ways. Venatnu, venatnu. And they shall give, and they shall give. Right to left and left to right. Why? Because God is hinting to the fact that when you give, you also receive. Mm-hmm. The giving goes both ways.
Yep.
So when you give, you're receiving too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Daniel, I think I heard your phone ring. That means I think we can hear you now. Where are you dialing in from?
We're coming to you live from Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, wow. Very good. Speedo Malabar.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you. Really, really good to have you. We miss you guys.
You know, apropos of what you were saying, one of the profoundest experiences I ever had was in 2014 in Operation Suketan, and I was serving as an escort officer in Devot Sahel. And I had to take a reporter, and I thought, I'm so tired of corpses and rockets. And it was a very open-minded reporter. And I said, why don't we go see a good story today? And so we went to Alea Negev, which is a rehab center for people with critical head injuries in the Negev, founded, oddly enough, by a major general, former commander of Southern Command, whose son was born without connective tissue in his brain. So his son never learned to say Abba or Ima, never could speak. And Doron always said, he was my greatest teacher. And he said, because he always said to me, I don't care how many medals you have on your chest or what rank you have on your shoulder. The only thing I care about is, can you love me for me? And so he said, and that led Doron and his wife Didi to found Alea Negev, which is this magnificent rehab center in the Negev near Beersheba. So I took the reporter down there, and we did the tour, and she was very impressed, and she wrote a very favorable article. This is a time of war, and I said, this rehab center was under rocket attack by Hamas. It was purposely targeted. So I thought, well, I've done my job today as an escort officer. We're going to get some good press out of this. And we were, moving through this one rehab area where they were doing physical therapy. And there was a Bedouin Arab and his wife. And she was a very strict Muslim, and she had the whole gear. She, not just the hijab, but she also had the veil over her face. And they were young people. She was probably in her late 20s. He was maybe in his early 30s. And he was really a handsome man who had been hit by a car, and now he was paralyzed from the waist down. And he was doing rehab and not doing it very well, and doing it very half-heartedly. And she was looking, I don't think I've ever seen anyone look at anyone with as much love as his wife was looking at him. And not speaking, but just that look encouraging. I mean, one of those beautiful things I had ever seen. And you could only see that part of her face.
Right.
And Doron said, yeah, this is, I forget the guy's name. He's having a hard time. We can't get him motivated to, he thinks, because he's a Bedouin Arab, and someone who's paralyzed in the Bedouin culture is worthless. And it's a disgrace for the family. And so he was pretty much of an outcast as well, socially.
Right.
And so, yeah, I thought, oh gosh, poor guy. And that's what I thought. And I'm walking out of the room. And Doron said, we just can't figure out how to motivate him to act like a champion.
Oh gosh.
And I had won a world championship the previous fall in powerlifting. And I have a ring on my finger very much like this one. But that was my first championship ring.
Right.
And we went out, and as we're going out, I thought, what kind of an idiot am I? I have something that can motivate this guy. So I went back in, I took the ring off, and I said, hi, you don't know me, I don't know you. You're a Muslim Arab, and I'm obviously a Jewish officer. I said, this is a world championship ring. I'm going to give it to you. It's not a present. I said, it's on loan to you until you can walk across this floor. Then you have to give it back. And he teared up, and his wife teared up. And I literally put the ring on his finger, almost like a wedding ceremony. And somebody took a picture of it. I wasn't aware that they were taking a picture of it. I have it on my wall. And I never felt that I owned something more fully than for having given it away to this guy.
Right.
And so we left, and, it was an emotional thing. And, I felt good about what I had done. And I was in an area where I was working completely alone. I wasn't working with our unit, and I really didn't have any billet, any place to sleep. And I hadn't had a shower in days, and I hadn't had a hot meal in a long time. And I had somebody from my kibbutz said, if you're ever in the Negev and you can't find a hot shower or a meal, you go to kibbutz Saad and you ask for Sarah. And to say that you're a friend of Vicky, and you'll get a hot shower and a meal, and she'll wash your uniform. So I go to kibbutz Saad, and I said, to the first guy I met, I said, can you tell me where I can find Sarah? He said, Sarah, how many Sarahs do you want? We have 5 Sarahs here. Right. Take your pick. Which Sarah do you? I said, I don't know her last name. I said, she's Vicky's friend from Ginagar. So he said, I don't know. So I said, okay, point me to the first Sarah. So I go up to this house and I knock on the door, and this big woman comes out, but I mean, warm-hearted, you could just tell. And there were soldiers sleeping on her front porch, laid out, and they'd put out cots, and they had a TV there so the kids could watch soccer. And I said, are you Sarah? She said, yes. I said, I'm Danny. I'm Vicky's friend from Ginagar. She said, who's Vicky? I said, are you Sarah? She said, I'm Sarah. Who are you? I said, I'm Danny. I'm Vicky's friend from Ginagar. And she said, I don't know any Vicky, and I don't know anybody from Ginagar, but you smell awful. And you really should come in and take a shower. And I'll wash your uniform. You can put on one of my son's bathrobes. And I'm making pizzas for all the kids, for all the soldiers, and I'll make you some pizza also. That woman, and this was the day after I was at Alea Negev, the rehab center, I now call my sister. That's how close we became. Right. So it was literally on the heels of that moment of having given that I got to this place honestly, I've never known a woman in my life who gives more every day. And she's a religious Jew, Saad is a religious kibbutz. She and her husband had taken all their furniture and put it out on the front lawn so that soldiers would have places to sit and watch television. We had 5 kids, 1 bathroom, and there were 8 soldiers taking showers there. I don't think she ever used her bathroom through the entire war. I don't know what she did. Amazing. But it was that, and I attribute having met that person who's such a central part of my life today to having given away that ring the day before. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you, really, very moving. I will say you reminded me. There's David Brooks is an author in this country. He writes about 2 resumes that we each have. There's the work resume, where we include our work qualifications, our diplomas, and so on. And then we have what he calls a eulogy resume. And those are very different. Eulogy resume speaks about our gifts to the world, our qualities, our attributes. And really what counts most is the eulogy resume. When you said that, I don't care about your medals, but I care about whether you love me as me. That's the eulogy resume. The medals are the work resume, right? And that's really what this is all about. That's what giving is all about. It's about the eulogy resume, not necessarily about the work resume. I'll show you one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. I got a number of these rings, and I plan to give them to my grandchildren and my kids. I said I'd keep competing until I won enough rings to give to every one of them. But I haven't decided who to give this one to. This is the ring I gave away. It's an empty box. That'll be the most precious one. Very good. Very good. All right, thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. Thank you. I just want to add maybe another layer of Kabbalah to giving and to loving. Giving and loving are almost synonymous. If you love, you give. And when you give, you love. But this comes from the Tanya, chapter 32, which, by the way,
was purposefully composed as chapter 32 by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya, because 32 in Hebrew is Lamed Bet. Lamed Bet spells out the word Lev, which means heart. And in that chapter of heart, Lev, he speaks about love. And it's interesting, by the way, to note, and I don't know if there's any connection, but the word for love in Hebrew is also Lamed Bet. Sorry, the word for love in English, Lamed Bet, is also, if you had to spell it in the Hebrew, with Hebrew letters, it's love, Lamed Bet. Love, Lamed Bet. But regardless, there he speaks about how can one attain this ultimate art of love that will lead you to giving. And he really, I think, represents this revolutionary idea that love must come from our ability to dig deep into ourselves and then dig deep into the other in order to find the divine soul, both in ourselves and in the other. If our love is based only on your looks, if my love is based only on your mind, you're as brilliant as it could be. If my love is based on any external features but the soul, then the love is temporary. Because if the mind changes, the love will change. If your looks change, my love will change. But if it's really based on the soul that I search for and then discover, then that soul is divine. Divinity does not change. That soul is infinite. It's empowered with infinite potential. That doesn't change. If a soul loves a soul, that love has become eternal, and that love is therefore translated into giving, a connection that is truly everlasting. And that's really the only way to attain love, according to the Tanya, and according to Kabbalah in general, by focusing on the soul of the other. And I thought of that because you were mentioning about this man who's so paralyzed. But if I'm able to go and look beyond that and find the soul, then that will be all that matters. And from there will stem my love and my giving. The soul-to-soul connection that creates love and giving. Okay. All right, we can, unless anyone else has any other comments, but we can continue here. We'll try to finish the chapter.
I'd like to just say thank you, Rabbi Allouche, for that. That was most beautiful. Thank you. It touched me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. No, thank you, Leah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and this is what our class is all about. Our class is a soul-to-soul connection class. It's not, it's not meant to be any other way. That's it. Yeah. Okay. Bottom of 127, unless any other comments. I welcome any other comments. No? Okay. Who wants to read? The same kind of approach is valid. Bottom of 127 here, at least in this book.
Okay, I'll read it if you want.
Thank you, Diana. Go for it. Thank you.
Same kind of approach is valid, of course, for the nation as a whole. The Jewish people should see itself as a single large family, as a special social entity with personal ties kept close and firm. This national entity is considered primary, not as a sum of many separate parts, but as that which results when one rises in level from one soul to another and reaches such a greater perfection that all the souls of Israel constitute one general soul, which is the divine manifestation in the world. Therefore, the various souls relate to one another as parts of one body. And from this point of view, the higher a person rises, the trials and difficulties involved are increasingly concerned with one's fellow man. For every human being is part of the single soul that is the spirit of the entire universe.
Right. Beautifully said. And again, speaking of that soul-to-soul connection, I think Rabbi Steinsaltz here put it so beautifully. But I do want to connect this to something that's quite fascinating, because, and it's very much connected, because I don't know why, but this thought jumped to my mind. You know, at the very end of Moses' life, he chooses to address the Jewish people one more time, one last time. He's 120 years old. He knows that death is imminent, that he won't be leading the Jewish people into the promised land. Rather, his student Joshua will be doing so. But he addresses them one last time. And in fact, it's that address is the second last portion of the entire Torah. It's the portion of Ha'azinu. And he addresses them in the form of a song, which is quite beautiful in and of itself, that Moses decided to sing a song to the Jewish people as his last words, to leave them with a resounding melody that will ring in their ears to eternity. Just that in of itself is really beautiful. But how does he open up the song? He says to them, Ha'azinu hashamayim va'adabera v'tishma ha'aretz im refi, which means, heavens, listen, and I will speak, and earth, hear me, and I will tishma ha'aretz, and the earth will hear my words. So listen, heavens, and I will speak, and the earth will hear my words. Now, is he addressing the nation, or is he addressing heaven and earth? And if he's addressing the nation, which was his intent, why even call to the heavens and to the earth? Speak to the people. Say, listen to people. Don't say, listen, heaven. And not only that, what's the point? What's the point to speak to the heavens and to the earth if that's who you want to address? You're about to die. Address the nation. And the answer, as the Kabbalistic commentaries offer, is that no, Moses wasn't just speaking to the heavens up there and to the earth down here. Moses was speaking to the heavens in us. In every one of us, there is a heaven and an earth. There is that soul and there is the body. There is everything that makes us so divine and everything that makes us so human or earthly. We have two facets in each and every one of us. At his very last address to the Jewish people, Moses says, the only way I can really leave an indelible impact, an impact that will trigger a positive effect on the Jewish people, is if I speak to the heavens. And that's what he says. Ha'azinu hashamayim, listen, heavens, va'adabera, and I will speak. And then the earth will follow, v'tishma haaretz, in a passive way, the earth will then lend an ear, v'tishma haaretz im refi. What was he teaching us? That if you speak to the heaven in people, people respond in a heavenly manner. If you speak to the earth in people, then people respond in an earthly manner. Our duty as divine beings is to speak to people in a divine way, to speak to, again, to the heavens in people. And I think we see that in education. When we speak to the infinite potential in our children, they respond in such a way. When we speak to how lowly they are and how bad they are, God forbid, or we label them with all sorts of stupid labels, then it paralyzes them. It paralyzes their growth. This is what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here, that when we are able to really relate to the soul of people, again, to the heaven in people, then we create heaven on earth, then because they respond with their heavenly features. And then the world is filled with their heavenly features. It all depends on us. I think that's why, to bring it on a very simple level, I've always wondered, one of the most famous lines that have been engraved in American consciousness is John F. Kennedy's line during his inauguration, January 22nd, 1961 in Washington, D.C., in which he turned to the American nation and he said, ask not what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, right? Now, let me ask you a question. Why was that line, out of so many other lines, engraved in our consciousness? Not such a brilliant line. Fine. He was asking people to do something for their country instead of the country doing something for them. But I think, again, that's because John F. Kennedy was speaking to the heaven in people. The heaven in people can do something, must do something, can contribute, can make a difference in the country. And when you speak to the heaven in people, it resonates. It resonates deeply and eternally. The Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, always, there's not one interaction. I'm amazed at it because I've been watching so many videos over the years, but there's not one interaction in which he told people to do more and to achieve more. Rabbi Steinsaltz himself tells the story, and I think I've shared it in the past, of how at one point in the 80s, he was feeling just over bombarded with work. He was involved with 4 different projects. And he couldn't take it anymore. And he decided to ask the Rebbe which project should he take off his plate because it's too much. And the Rebbe told him, not only should you stay involved with all of those projects, but let me add another one. Rabbi Steinsaltz would often say that he did, of course, as being a chassid of the law, he did, and it amazed him because all of a sudden he had room for all of that. And he concluded, you see, the Rebbe believed in me more than I believed in myself because he saw the heaven in me. And that was his secret, one of his great secrets, that he saw things in us that we didn't see in ourselves. But when you see the soul in people, you see sometimes that which they do not see in themselves, because you see the soul with all of its abilities. And that's the secret, I think, of education, secret of human interaction, and certainly secret of self-development. We have to search for ourselves in us. That's where it starts. And this is how this chapter concludes, because really the only or the ultimate point of connection with God is when we see the God in us, the heaven in us, and certainly the God in others and the heaven in others. And that's the ultimate mitzvah, the ultimate connection, the ultimate bridge. And that creates divinity in the world. But that's the big idea. Again, I want to hear your comments. I don't want to be the only one speaking.
Rabbi?
Yes, Joyce, please.
First of all, thank you for this class, Gila, and for Rabbi for sharing. And it's everything, I believe. And even the story that you retold just now, I love it. I remember it well, because if I don't know why my background is foggy, but for whatever reason.
That's right. We can see you better. We're not distracted from the background.
But I am laughing because if you looked around, you would see a zillion projects that are on my desk and table and everywhere. And I remember that story. I do remember that story because sometimes it gets too much. Right. And then I remember that, okay, you wouldn't put this here. You want me to do this. Yeah. And my kids even say, Mom, you're getting too old. You should not. I said, I have to, I'm doing this. That's all. I'm doing it. Yeah. But the piece that's so important is that always, maybe it was from my bubby, my mama, my whatever it is, I have the children that have been put before me, that I've been blessed to work with, I have always seen their soul. And right. I've struggled against, when I say against, the labeling, because it limits the ability of healing for these children that have had very challenging lives. Right. And when you, and it's not something, I'm saying me, I don't mean me, the person, my soul. It's, I think, how I came into this world. And I think what you say is we learn not to see. We learn not to see, but it's instinctual to see past, I say, see past what you see with your everyday eyes. Yeah. Yeah. And see with the vision, we know this of our heart. Right. But I think that this is so critical in our time to always see. Yeah. Yeah. And that is something very difficult. It's beyond education. It's beyond, it's a soul learning, what you talk about. And it's critically important for our world to heal and for us to reach out to one another beyond those limitations.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. It's interesting because we spoke of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. One of his, one of the subjects that he emphasized the most towards the end of his life was that the only way Mashiach can come is if we open up our eyes. Open up your eyes. He would say that so often, hundreds of times. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. What does it mean to open your eyes? By the way, it's connected to Lag BaOmer, which we just celebrated. Lag BaOmer is the day of passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was, of course, the foremost Kabbalist. And It's interesting that his passing fell on Lag Ba'omer. Lag, if you switch the two letters around, as pointed by his students, you spell out the Hebrew word Gal. Now, there's a verse in the book of Psalms that says, Gal enai va'abita niflaot mitoratecha. Open up my eyes, and I will see wonders, the wonders of your Torah. Gal enai. Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was all about opening up our eyes. As the Rebbe emphasized towards the end of his life, what does that mean? Open up your eyes so that you see not just bodies, but you see souls. You see not just minds, but you see spirits. You see not just earth, but you see heavens. That's what it means to open up your eyes. By the way, if I may, I want to translate this. I know we're speaking up here, but let's speak down here and translate this into a practical suggestion. And I'm thinking of yet another story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but I heard that's the story from Rabbi Joseph Telushkin himself. Rabbi Telushkin, who authored so many books on Judaism, he was here in our community a few times. A great mind, one of the greatest minds in the Jewish world today, I believe. But Joseph Telushkin tells the story of his father. His father, who was the accountant of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he had great ties with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, of blessed memory. And he speaks about, he told me how his father felt very ill. He had a stroke, I believe, and he was very ill in hospital, and he was rehabilitating himself, but it was taking a long time. And all of a sudden, as he was in hospital, you know, he could barely function. He was an active person, a very, very, very successful accountant. As he's lying in the hospital, having lost so much, he receives a phone call from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. What was the phone call about? The Rebbe said to him, look, I have an accounting question. You're my accountant. I have an accounting question. Can you tell me how to solve this problem? And Joseph Telushkin says that he sees his father all of a sudden coming back to life and solving this accounting issue, which, by the way, was not a complicated accounting issue. Now, he asked himself for a long time, why did the Rebbe call? The guy was in hospital, leave him alone. Why did he call that question? And he realized that the greatest way you can heal a person is by giving him or her a sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Rebbe called it an accounting question, maybe then he knew the answer already. But he wanted to reignite in his father a sense of purpose. You need it in this world. You're an excellent accountant. I need your advice. And that is what brought him back to life and eventually led to his ultimate healing. How can we not just see the heaven in people, but actualize the heaven in people by giving people a sense of purpose, by giving them, by believing in them and in their actions, sometimes more than they believe in themselves. I think it's the greatest way to heal a person. So if you know a person that is either physically sick or maybe emotionally sick, spiritually sick, I think the best thing we can do for them is to give them a sense of purpose. I think that's particularly true as we are about to welcome the summer vacation where people are just wallowing in boredom. And no wonder it gives room to a lot of feelings of just uselessness or even depression. The best way to deal with that is to say to people, no, you're needed. Don't just go and lie on the beach endlessly forever and ever. You need it. Rabbi Steinsaltz would often say, you know which people we can't ask anything of? The only people we can't ask anything of are dead people. Everyone else we must ask everything of. And that's what gives them life. That's what gives them purpose. And that's what awakens the heaven in them. So to put every discussion into practical terms, let's find a purpose for ourselves, first and foremost. Let's see really what we can do to actualize our heaven. But in the same time, also encourage people to fulfill their divine purpose, especially the emotionally sick, physically sick, spiritually sick.